You're sitting on the couch, you're not doing anything, you're not moving, not talking, not even looking at your phone, and your border collie is locked onto you like you're the most important thing that has ever existed in this room. Most people laugh it off. They just love me, they say. And maybe that's part of it. But every border collie handler has had that moment where the stare feels like something else, something more deliberate, more focused than affection, like your dog is reading something off your face that you don't even know is there. So here's the question. Does your border collie actually know what you're thinking? The honest answer is, not exactly, but what they're doing is in some ways more precise than that, and it's not mystical at all. It's neurological. And once you understand the mechanism behind that stare, you'll never look at it the same way again. Welcome to Collie Mind. If you're serious about understanding what your border collie actually is, not just how to manage them, but what's running underneath, subscribe now because this is what we're here for. By the end of this video, you'll understand that stare at a level most owners never reach. To understand why your border collie watches you the way they do, you have to start about 200 years back, on a hillside in the Scottish borders. Shepherds weren't just breeding for speed or stamina. They were selecting for something far more specific, a dog that could read a flock of several hundred sheep at distance, detect the first sign of movement before it became chaos, and make a rapid series of decisions about how to respond. All of that without a single word from the handler. What they produced, over generations of that pressure, was a brain wired for real-time movement analysis, not just detecting motion, extracting meaning from it. The difference between a sheep shifting its weight and a sheep about to bolt. The difference between a relaxed group and one that's about to fracture. That's the machinery your border collie is running in your living room right now. It connects directly to something called the predatory motor sequence, the chain of behaviors inherited from wolves that goes orient, stalk, eye, chase, grab, kill. In most breeds, domestication disrupted that sequence pretty thoroughly. In the border collie, breeders took one specific part of it, the eye phase, and amplified it to an extreme degree. The eye is that locked, unblinking focus where the dog freezes and reads. In a working context, it's how a BC holds a flock in position without touching a single animal. Pure visual pressure, pure information gathering. That phase doesn't disappear when your dog walks through your front door. It redirects. Your hands moving across a keyboard, the slight change in your breathing when you're stressed, the way you shift your weight before you stand up. Your border collie is cataloging all of it, continuously, the same way their ancestors cataloged a flock. Your household is their territory to monitor. You are the most important variable in it. And here's the part that separates this from the kind of sensitivity we talk about in other breeds. This isn't a Labrador picking up on your sadness because they're emotionally tuned in. This is a high-speed pattern recognition system that was selectively refined for 2 centuries to do exactly this job. The emotional warmth you feel from your BC is real, but it's layered over a cognitive process that runs far deeper than feeling. The brain built to manage sheep doesn't stop working. It just finds a new flock, so the system is running. The question is what, specifically, it's processing. Start with your face. Humans produce what researchers call micro-expressions. Involuntary muscle movements that flash across the face in a fraction of a second, often before we've consciously registered the emotion ourselves. We're not great at catching them in each other. We miss them constantly. Your border collie, bred to detect the first twitch of movement in a sheep 40 meters away, is processing those signals in real time. The slight tension around your eyes when something bothers you, the way your jaw tightens before you say something you're not sure about. These aren't things you decide to show. They happen below the level of conscious control, and your BC is reading them the moment they appear. Then there's postural reading, the angle of your shoulders, whether your weight is forward or back in your seat, how your hands are sitting, loose and open, or pulled in and tense. Border collies are exceptionally tuned to postural cues because that's exactly what they tracked on the hill. A sheep's body angle tells you everything about its next move. Your body angle tells your dog everything about yours. When you're about to get up and leave the house, your posture changes before your feet hit the floor. Your BC has already clocked it. This feeds directly into something researchers call social referencing. Dogs use the human face as an emotional compass. When they encounter something uncertain in their environment, they check back with their handler to read the emotional verdict before deciding how to respond. Herding breeds do this more frequently than almost any other group. They're not just gathering information once and acting on it, they're running a continuous feedback loop, checking and recalibrating based on what they see on your face. Your reaction to something shapes their reaction to it, and they know this in whatever way dogs know things. Now here's a finding that takes this further. Research on what's called gifted word learner dogs, a small group of exceptional learners, heavily represented by Border Collies, found that some of these dogs can pick up the names of objects simply by overhearing human conversation. Not being taught directly, not having the word repeated to them, just listening to two people talk and connecting the word to the object through context alone. What that tells you isn't just that some Border Collies have unusual language skills. It tells you they're monitoring the social content of the room even when they're not the subject of it. They're tracking your conversations, your tone shifts, the emotional texture of your interactions with other people. Your household isn't just a place they live in. It's a social environment they're actively mapping. Put all of this together and the picture becomes clear. Your Border Collie isn't reacting to one signal at a time. They're running parallel tracks, your face, your body, your voice, the room, and integrating everything into a single, continuously updated read. The same cognitive architecture that let their ancestors manage a moving flock across unpredictable terrain is doing the same job here, just applied to a more emotionally complex problem, which means your BC often registers that something has shifted in you before you do. Before you've decided to get anxious, before you've chosen to get up, before you've consciously acknowledged that something is wrong, the data is already in, they've already adjusted. Reading you in the moment is one thing. What researchers discovered in 2019 is something else entirely, and it changes the way you have to think about what your Border Collie is actually carrying around with them every day. A team of scientists published a study in Scientific Reports looking at long-term cortisol levels in 58 human-dog pairs. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone, and they measured it the same way in both species, through hair samples which give you a picture of chronic stress over weeks, not just a snapshot of one bad moment. 25 of those pairs were Border Collies and their handlers. What they found was a genuine statistically significant synchrony. The dog's long-term cortisol levels tracked their handlers, not loosely, not as a trend, as a correlation strong enough to hold across two separate sampling periods, summer and winter. This isn't the same as saying your dog gets nervous when you raise your voice. That's acute stress, and most dogs show some version of that. What this study showed is chronic biological mirroring. Your Border Collie's baseline stress level, the amount of cortisol running through their system as a default, moves in the same direction as yours across weeks and months. If you're running high, so are they, not because of anything they've done or anything you've done to them, just because they live with you and they're paying attention. Think about what that means for a dog this attuned. Every day, your Border Collie is not just reading your signals in the moment, they're absorbing your emotional baseline and making it their own. A handler who carries chronic stress, who runs anxious or inconsistent or emotionally unpredictable, isn't just having a rough day, they're raising their dog's floor. And a raised cortisol baseline in a Border Collie doesn't just affect how they feel. It shows up in sleep disruption, in heightened reactivity, in behaviors that look like training problems but are actually physiological ones. The flip side is equally real. A calm, steady handler, not perfect, not emotionless, just consistent, produces a measurably calmer dog. Not through any technique, not through a specific protocol, through biology. Your nervous system and your dog's nervous system have, over time, synchronized. That's what the data says. This is why the "they just know" feeling that every Border Collie handler describes isn't a projection. It's not you anthropomorphizing your dog because you love them, they do know. And the mechanism isn't psychic, it's chemical. It's weeks of slow biological calibration to your emotional state, built on top of everything we covered about the moment-to-moment scanning. The two systems stack. Your BC reads you in real time through movement and expression, and simultaneously carries a long-term chemical record of what living with you actually feels like. For a breed shaped by thousands of generations of near-constant proximity to one human working partner, this depth of attunement probably made perfect sense. The dog needed to know the shepherd not just right now, but deeply and reliably. What that selection pressure produced is a dog whose stress physiology is genuinely, measurably entangled with yours. Not mind reading, body reading. So let's name what's actually happening here, because the framing matters. Your Border Collie isn't inside your head. They don't know you're thinking about a difficult conversation you need to have tomorrow, or that you're quietly dreading something you haven't said out loud. Thoughts, in the abstract sense, aren't accessible to them. But thoughts don't stay abstract for long. They land in your body. They change your breathing rate, the tension in your neck, the way you're holding your hands, how still or restless you are in your seat. And that physical language, the one you're producing without noticing, is exactly what your Border Collie was built to read. You think you're calm. Your dog knows your jaw hasn't loosened in an hour. This is the predatory motor sequence turned inward. The herding eye, the movement reading, the pattern recognition that held sheep on a hillside, all of it redirected toward the one thing in their world that matters most. You. You are their flock, not in a diminishing sense, but in the most precise functional sense. You are the subject of their continuous attention, the variable they're tracking, the signal they've organized their entire perceptual life around. And because Border Collies don't distribute that attention broadly the way social breeds do, it concentrates. Research on herding breed attachment consistently shows they form singular, deep bonds with one primary person. That's not a personality quirk. It's the same selection pressure that made them work as a unit with one shepherd across an entire working day. The bond isn't just emotional, it's operational. You are the handler, and they are always on. What this means for the relationship is something most owners get slightly wrong. When your Border Collie follows you from room to room, positions themselves where they can see your face, or seems agitated when your mood shifts, that's not separation anxiety, and it's not neediness in the way that word usually gets used. It's a working dog running the only job available to them. The scanning doesn't stop because there's no flock. It finds its target and stays there. The vulnerability in this is real. A dog built to read you this precisely, bonded to you this completely, needs something specific in return, to be understood for what they actually are. Not a devoted pet who's a little intense. A working partner whose entire neurological architecture is pointed at you, running a continuous read, carrying your stress in their chemistry, organizing their sense of purpose around your presence and your signals. When that goes unrecognized, when the stare gets dismissed, when the attunement gets treated as a behavior problem, the dog doesn't stop. They can't. They just do the job without anyone acknowledging the work. The stare, the scanning, the cortisol sync, the singular bond, these aren't separate things happening in the same dog. They're one system. They were built together, they run together, and they point in one direction, at you. That dog watching you from across the couch isn't being strange. They're working. You're the job, and you always have been. The shift that matters isn't a training change, it's a perceptual one. Start noticing what your body is doing, because your Border Collie already has. Your tension, your steadiness, your emotional consistency, these aren't just things you carry, they're things your dog lives inside of. Collie mind exists for exactly this, the real psychology of this specific, extraordinary breed. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper. And share this with every Border Collie handler you know, because most of them are looking at that stare and still wondering what it means.